Hello, I'm going to tell you a story. The story of Elden Ring and some of Shadow of the Erdtree, but it's going to be like a fairy tale bedtime style, hopefully in a different way that you haven't heard before. Now, I have taken some creative liberties with the timelines and details, so I'd advise you not to treat this as the most accurate source of lore. Instead, feel free to use this as a relaxing sleep aid. There will be no pre-roll, middle, or ending ads in this video, so rest assured you can put this on and nothing is going to wake you. But in order to help me out, I do have a sponsor that I want to thank first, and then we can get on. So thank you, Surfshark. A VPN is like armor. You wouldn't march up to the tree sentinel at level 1 with no clothes. You're not that guy. That's what Surfshark does. It gives you a shield to protect your online world, keeping your activity private. Once you're connected, everything you do, every search, every click is encrypted. No snoopers, no trackers, and no one watching over your shoulder. You can change your virtual location and connect to over 3,200 servers in more than 100 countries. That means you can access sites, watch shows, and unblock streaming services as if you were anywhere in the world. And I really like how it makes me feel safe when I'm out in public at a cafe or an airport. I can connect to public Wi-Fi safely, and I know it's going to let me send, receive, or download files securely. Or, get around things for research purposes. And Surfshark offers more than just VPNs. Their alert system warns you the moment your personal data, like your email or your password, leaks online, so you can stay informed and protect your logins. And if you ever need help, their support team is there 24/7. So if you'd like to keep your online world safe as you wander through life, use code Chalice or the link below for an extra 4 months free, plus a 30-day money-back guarantee so you can try it risk-free. Thank you to Surfshark. Let us begin our tale. Long ago, there was a kingdom called the Lands Between. Rivers ran wild, forests grew deep, and mountains rose with frosted peaks. From the dark beyond the stars came a distant power, neither man nor beast, but something vast and strange. An entity that set its sights upon our world, the Greater Will. From the sky descended its envoy, a dreadful and cosmic creature named Metyr. She was a mass of flesh and fingers, her head shaped like a thumb, her face the wall of a fingerprint. In the folds of her body gaped a hungry maw, from which she birthed crawling bundles of digits, mockeries of hands that dragged themselves through the dust. Fingers were everything here. They were said to point towards the truth. From Metyr came the 2 fingers, emissaries of the Greater Will. They were silent limbs twitching and curling, and their language few could understand. Their interpreters, finger readers, crones who croaked their prophecies to the faithful. But who can say if they truly understood what was meant by the gestures of those strange things? The 2 fingers held a high duty. It was theirs to choose rare beings worthy of becoming Empyreans, heirs who might shape the order of the world. Such chosen were given vassals to protect them, and powers beyond measure. But to resist the fingers or the greater will that moved them was to invoke wrath beyond imagining. From the heavens, the Greater Will sent yet another servant, the Elden Beast, a living star, its body shimmered with countless runes. These runes together formed what we call the Elden Ring, the pattern of lore itself, the lattice upon which our existence rests. Whoever bore the ring would decide the fate of the world. One among these people of the Lands Between was chosen to bear that mantle. Her name was Marika, who in time would rise as eternal queen and vessel of the Elden Ring. But once chosen, silence fell. Metyr waited for her master's voice, and none came. Still she waited, still the 2 fingers twitched, still the finger readers muttered. If the Greater Will still spoke, or whether only hollow whispers of the past remained, none dared to question. And in that silence, people began to fashion their own truths. Temples were raised, creeds recited, laws carved into stone. In caves, tribes whispered prayers to the dark waters. In skies, dragons stretched their wings, and in groves, the folk of the old world honoured the tangled root of life itself. So the lands between became a realm of faith in fingers that could not speak, and in gods who no longer answered. Faith in rival truths, in competing laws, in ancient terrors. You see, before any crown or decree, the lands between were shaped by older powers, faceless deities and forces that whispered through stone and star. Beneath all matter flows the primeval current, unseen but eternal, a celestial torrent, said to be born from the scattering of stars. Sorcerers speak of it as a procession of light, crystals known as glintstones flowing from a distant cluster, binding both the land and the fate of those who walk it. It carries life and death together, a cycle that predates all. To gaze too deeply into its mysteries is to be undone, bewitched, haunted, driven to despair. Some who have peered into the abyss spoke of a wisdom not meant for us mortals, of truths that shattered minds, leaving them changed forever. From the heaven fell meteors, whether they were gift or punishment depends on who tells the tale. Where they struck, new life rose from stone. The alabaster lords, with bodies of living rock, crawled from the impact of these fallen stars. They carried blades of meteoric ore, and with them the pull of gravity itself. It was they who first showed men how to bend the stars' strength, and they who control the stars controls fate itself. The heart of the living world churned the crucible, the raw origin of life itself. Horns, wings, and feathers all tangled together, neither separate nor whole. Some worshipped it as the truest, holiest form of being. Others feared and scorned it as unevolved chaos. Yet if you look carefully, you will notice it still remains today. Warriors walk this land with tails and scales, marked forever by this ancient unity of crucible. But the crucible was not the only power that lingered. In swamps bloomed the curse of scarlet rot. It ate away at body and mind, sprouting mushrooms and blossoms from its victims until they withered or went mad. Yet others saw it as holy flowers that ground us to this earth. For long ago, lords crowned themselves in fungal bodies and worshipped decay as divinity. They saw in the rot not sickness but godhood, appointing saints and Valkyries who'd longed to bloom into its chosen. Though its essence was once sealed away, its faith still endures, for even now, servants tend to its blossoms, waiting for the day its bloom will cover the world entire. And then there were beings that could not be seen or touched. The greater will was the loudest, but never the only. The fell god raged in fire. It was an ancient malformed deity, said to bear curled horns and braids of blazing red hair. Its single evil, grotesque eye burned in the hearts of the giants, and from it rose their flame, a fire that could melt all and never die. Look north, and some say you can still glimpse its glow, still smouldering, waiting to rise again. However, if you see fire that whispers with yellow madness, then that is the flame of frenzy. Whether it was itself a god or only a manifestation, none could say. Its touch melted all living and dead. Followers clawed at their eyes, their sockets weeping yellow embers, welcoming the day when all would be set alight. The coming reunion of the one great, where all divisions would be incinerated. They wait still for the chosen one who will descend to the depth and rise as the Lord of Ruin. The formless mother brooded with blood. She craved wounds, and through them her will flowed. Her servants bore crimson flame, hunger made fire. Her whispers turned men into blood fiends who pierced her body as she wished, drinking from a cut that will never fester nor heal. In return, she gives dynasty, belonging, and scarlet rivers that will never run dry. And then there was destined death. Long ago, a dusk-eyed queen wielded a flame that could undo even immortality. She gathered to her side pale priests who swaddled themselves in skin, bending their serpentine flesh. With their god-slaying fire, they hunted the divine. Yet this queen was overthrown and her power sealed away when no one could ever use it. Her cult lingers still, though. Their black flames a reminder that true death was once a part of this world. These powers, fire and blood, star and rot, current and crucible, made the first tapestry of the lands between. They lived on in secret cults, outcast faiths, scars in this land. The lands between has always been a contested ground where many truths wait in shadow, longing to be understood. And so the world stood, contested and divided, when at last a queen rose to bind these powers to her own design. Queen Marika ruled the lands between, but once long ago she was not a queen at all, nor even divine. She was born among a strange people, rare in number and long in life. Some called them Numen, others called them shamans, saying their flesh could mingle with others in wondrous ways. But whatever name was given, they were hunted, stolen away, cut apart and pressed into jars, their bodies treated as ingredients for cruel rituals they did not choose. Marika heard those cries, the cries of her people imprisoned, and in that sorrow, something kindled inside of her, a spark that set her apart. The two fingers saw it too. They named her Empyrean, one fit to bear the mantle of a god. They chose her to carry the Elden Ring, to be the champion of the greater will. When she rose to divinity, her first act was to claim the power that lay at the heart of all life. It was called the Crucible, a tangled, glowing mass of gold streaked with red, where every form and every creature was once joined. The horn-sent people, kin to Marika's homeland, had long worshipped this origin, but now it was no longer theirs. Marika took its power, reshaped it, and from it grew something new. A tree, tall and golden, it rose higher than mountains, brighter than the sun. The Erdtree, a wonder never seen before. Spreading its blessing across the lands, those who dwelled near it found their eyes alight with gold. Grace, they called it. Inside Marika herself, the Elden Ring now rested, dictating the laws of the world, and she, wanting peace and an end to fear, pulled away the rune of death. She gave it to her beast companion Malekith to guard, so that none could wield it. In this way, lives were lengthened, souls returned to the Erdtree, and a promise was made, that the people of the lands between would be reborn again and again. It was a gentler system than the jars of her childhood, a new order for her children to inherit. This was the Golden Order. Yet Marika did not stand alone. At her side was Godfrey, her chosen consort, crowned as the first Elden Lord. His strength was unmatched. With axe in hand he fought giants, dragons and beasts, his name carved into songs of victory. At Marika's command, Godfrey marched north against the fire giants who bore a ruinous flame, the only fire that could burn the Erdtree. He broke them in battle, leaving only one survivor, cursed to guard the flame forever. Their fell god was forced into slumber, its threat sealed away for now. With each foe slain, Godfrey's legend grew, But so too did Marika's bloodline. Together they bore 3 children: Godwyn, the golden, radiant and beloved, the people's pride and hope. His younger brothers, Morgott and Moog, were twins, but unlike him, they were born with horns. They were omens, a mark of curse and shame. Marika, who wished to leave such shadows behind, cast them down into the sewers of the capital. But fate marked the twins differently. Morgott clung to the Erdtree, guarding it with stubborn loyalty, as though he might wash away his curse through service. Moog turned instead to the formless mother, dreaming of a dynasty steeped in blood, his blood that was to be celebrated. Yet even Marika and Godfrey's rule could not last. For when Godfrey had slain every foe at her bidding, there were no more battles left to fight. The golden light in his eyes, the very grace that guided him, faded. His will was gone, his purpose spent. So Marika stripped him and his warriors of their grace, sending them into exile. Go to other lands, she bade them, live and die and grow stronger, and one day you may return. These were the Tarnished, wanderers cast out of their home. They marched away in silence, waiting for the day when grace would call them back again. Later, Marika took another king consort, a red-haired figure who was both her champion and her other self in divided flesh. From their strange union, at least 2 more children were born. The first I shall tell you of was Melania, the Severed, a swordswoman without equal, but cursed with scarlet rot. She fought with unyielding grace, even as her body withered, and when her strength finally failed, she called upon the rot within, turning each battlefield into a festering bloom. But each time she did, death drew nearer, for on the 3rd bloom, she would rise no longer as a warrior, but as the goddess of rot herself. Her twin was Mikola the Kind, who shared in his sibling's cursed existence. He would never grow past childhood, bound forever to be small, frail, but youthful. He watched his beloved sister suffer and swore to find a curse for their afflictions. He dreamed of a kinder, gentler world order, free from this suffering. So he too turned away from the golden path, stripping himself of his body, strength and lineage. He withdrew to the realm of shadow, the same land from which his mother once came. And there in that shadowed land dwelled the forgotten son, another of Marika's children cursed from her womb. Mesmer bore within him an abyssal serpent, coiling and gnawing at his soul. Marika sealed the great snake away, and in return she bound her son to her will. She returned to that shadow land one day to collect on the favour. She commanded him to lead a crusade against the Hornsent, those proud folk who clung to the crucible and their torturous rituals. Mesmer obeyed. With his black-armoured knights, he scourged, he burned, he razed their homes to the ground, earning him the title of Impaler. The screams of his victims rose to the heavens. "O Marika, why hast thou forsaken us? Betrayer, dictator, strumpet queen." And in time, Mesmer too took upon their cries. Marika abandoned him as she abandoned them. She veiled the realm of shadow from the rest of the lands between, severing all remaining ties, turning away her gaze, and never looking back. And so her dynasty stretched across the lines of territory and blood. Godwyn, Morgott, Moog, Melania, Mikola, Mesmer, and yet 3 others stood beneath this family tree. Alongside them were Radahn, Rykard, and Rani, born of Radagon's union with another queen. For Marika was not the only one. Beneath the golden boughs shone another. In Liurnia of the Lakes, Renala, queen of the full moon, reigned. She headed the Carian royal family, whose sorceries were born of the stars. At her side stood the Carian knights, defenders of her line, who wielded sword and sorcery together as an art few could rival. Renala's pride was the Academy of Rea Lucaria, a citadel of stone and water in the heart of the lakes. Within these halls, astrologers charted the fate of the night sky, and glintstone sorcerers tapped into the amber of the universe to wield its power. These scholars defied the Golden Order, preaching that the stars carried the true laws of the world. In time, the Academy began to rival even Marika's own forces. To quell Renala's rising power, Marika sent her red-haired champion Radagon. He came as foe, but became husband to the Moon Queen. Their bond brought peace to the lakes, and their union bore 3 children: Rykard, a ruthless justiciar, Radan, a master of gravity, and Rani, the cold, resolute princess and heir. But their marriage would not last. When Marika called, Radagon abandoned Renala and returned to the God Queen's side. Broken in heart, Renala shut herself away within the Academy, cradling the last token of her husband's lost love. Marika raised the siblings as her own stepchildren, setting them among her golden brood of demigods. Renala was left without kin. She once had a younger sister, Relana, a princess of Caria, trained in sorcery, combat, and wielder of 2 moons. Yet Relana too had turned away, disavowing her birthright. She bound herself instead to Mesmer the Impaler, the forsaken son of Marika, wielding the light of moon in service to his fire. And so, Renala lost all: her husband, her children, and her sister. Even her scholars betrayed her, and from their ranks rose the Cuckoo Knights, who brought ruin to the once great Academy. The even radiance casts a shadow. Beneath the golden branches of the Erdtree, far beyond its light, lived people, buried and cursed. These were the hidden, the forbidden, the forgotten. You see, upon the obscuring of the land of shadow and the Erdtree's creation, something else was born: a twisted, brittle silhouette, a foil to that resplendent pillar of Marika's design. The Shadow Tree. It bore no ordinary light, nor defined order, only a hate-filled umbra. Yet the people still worshipped it as holy, though its blessings tasted of ash in their mouth, bitter as the horn-sent people had become. Spurned and wounded, they bent their knee beneath its shade and cried out in spite, "We have been abandoned. We are forsaken. Reject, resist, revile." Another race who drew the ire of the heavens were the Nox. Grey-skinned alchemists who shaped silver into uncanny mockeries of life. Their eternal cities, sisters, Nokron and Noxstella, gleamed with pale towers of stone. Their streets walked by nobles in flowing silks and veiled crowns. Theirs was a people of night magic, conjurers of shadow and smoke. They bred assassins who struck unseen, their blades steeped in death. They were born to rebel, and so they tried to forge a lord of their own. But this was treason, a blasphemy against the greater will. For their defiance, they were cursed, becoming prisoners of their own design. From a lightless void plunged a malformed star, a creature of chitin and hunger. It tore down their towers and stole their night sky, driving their cities deep below the earth. Now their streets glow with corpse light, their spires buried, their beauty wasted in caverns untouched for centuries. But not all ruins sank beneath. Some were torn skyward, carried aloft by the gusts of time. So hangs Farum Azula, the broken city in the clouds where its spires twist to the endless storms and lightning embroiders the sky. In the age before the Erdtree, the world belonged to dragons. Their wings shadowed mountains and their breath crackled with red thunder. Over them ruled the many-headed dragon lord, Placidusax, Elden Lord in truth long before Godfrey. We humans call our own kind the first, forgetting what came before. At the heart of the storm stood the Dragon Lord's throne, where he served a god who, as gods in these tales often do, abandoned him. When that god vanished, Placidusax did not rage. He turned inward, withdrawing to the storm's eye to wait, silently. Yet even his reign was not free from betrayal. One of his brood, Baal the Dread, rose against him, leaving grievous wounds and stumps where once many heads had crowned his glory. Their battle ended in a bloody stalemate, until Baal, broken, fled to the jagged peaks. In the wake of his wounds, the Dragon Lord set his kind to a new purpose. His servants took the form of priestesses and beckoned human warriors to join their cause. Thus began the rites of dragon communion, a pact to hunt down Baal's drakes and consume their hearts in exchange for draconic power. But in time, this purpose was forgotten. Communion became hunger. Hunters grew greedy, devouring heart after heart as their bodies slowly contorted, their pupils narrowed, and their voices were drowned out by roars. Some say that the molten worms that crawl today, bloated and pitiful, were once these hunters, their greed turning them into creatures that could only writhe on their bellies. Now Farum Azula is shrine and tomb alike. Dragons form a living wall of stone around their king. Chosen beastmen in ancient armour prowl its broken spires, and within, Placidusax slumbers still, a lord locked in vigil, waiting forever for a god who will never return. In deep caverns and valleys, the sound of stamping feet, wind song, and haunting lullabies could be heard as the ancestral followers called forth spirit vapour from the bones of their dead. They worshipped an eternal herd, believing death no ending, but a return to the great beast. Wearing antlers as crowns, they tended sprouting horns and guarded their creatures, praying they would ascend into ancestral spirits. They lived in harmony with the beasts, herding their flocks far, far from the Erdtree. For in their creed, both birth and death could sprout alike from the soul. In the realm of shadow dwelt another horned folk, though their fate was harsher still. The horn-scent bore their horns as proof of divine choosing. Their beasts were taken as messengers of heaven, and only the mightiest warriors were granted the lion's mane to dance the sacred steps. But in time, this ritual was turned toward war, its holy rhythm sharpened into a weapon. It is told that the horn scent ate even the land itself, feasting on scorpions that crawled through the wastes, some swollen to monstrous size. And some whisper that this was the work of the Saint of the Bud. But in those days of fire, when Mesmer burned a church draped in blossoms, one woman did not flee. She knelt as the roof fell in, clutching a single bud, its petals withering before they could bloom. From her grief came something twisted, an essence that became the scarlet rot. Her name was Romina. In devotion to flowers that would never bloom, she was remade, part scorpion, part butterfly, part centipede, a saint of decay, bound to the garden, forever barren. But not all who dwelled beneath the Erdtree were heretics. Some were simply unwanted. The omens born with horns were deemed abominations. Many were slain as infants, their horns carved away in shame. Those of noble blood, like Morgoth and Moog, were hidden in sewers, locked away so none could bear the sight. Hatred for their kind grew so fierce that hunters were raised against them, the omen killers. These wretches wore grotesque masks to terrify their prey, wielding cleavers set with trophies torn from victims past. They were cruel butchers, born only to exterminate. The Albinurics were no less despised. Artificial beings, silver-blooded and fragile, they were said to be denied grace from the moment of their creation. Persecuted, hunted, they carried within them a flaw of birth that doomed their bodies to fail. The first generation lost the use of their legs, yet they endured, crafting bows and taming wolves to bear them better in battle. The second generation seemed spared that weakness, frog-like and quick upon the ground, but still, they were hunted, harvested like beasts, and so they placed their hope in one gentler than the rest. They whispered of a tree high above, and of Mikola the Kind, who would one day grant them sanctuary. The demi-humans roamed in clawed packs, at times bowing to lords, at times devouring one another. By night, their blood boiled, and their eyes shone red. Some whispered that they had once been wiser than men, keepers of vast knowledge of the stars. But they were stripped of their reason and cursed into savagery. Their sorceress queens still rule shattered colonies, but most of their kind wander broken, feared, and beaten down. Now I shall tell you of one dark night when the moon had turned away her face. Shadows stole through the royal capital, women cloaked in veils, their steps soundless, their forms liquid, black knife assassins, scions of a long-lost city, daughters of the Newman kin to Marika herself. In secret, they had been given a terrible tool, a shard of destined death, that part of the rune Marika had plucked away long ago. They pried it from Malekith's keeping and steeped their blades in its power, sharp enough to kill a god. Those knives on the back of Godwyn the Golden. As they pierced him, a brand formed upon his skin, a mark that stole his soul but left his body. The Erdtree could not grasp his spirit as it slipped away forever. This moment would come to be known as the Night of Black Knives, the hour when shadows betrayed the Golden Line. Godwyn was laid to rest at the roots of the Erdtree, but he could never truly rest. In the deep root depths, he began to change. The fair prince's body warped and swelled. Along his neck grew scales and fins. His arms grew webbed, his flesh sagged and rotted, and his once bright face widened into a distorted fungal disc. Death blight seeped from his wounds, and the air swarmed with flies. From him sprouted blackened death root, seeping into soil and corpses alike, birthing those who live in death, neither dead nor alive, denied the Erdtree's embrace, wandering aimlessly, worshipping their new prince of death. The land mourned. Great stone mausoleums were raised, wandering like giants as they tolled their bells of grief. Knights once sworn to Godwyn severed their own heads, binding themselves to these walking tombs, guarding their prince in death themselves. Scholars, warriors, even Mikola himself sought a way to restore Godwyn, but all attempts failed. None was more broken than the Queen. When news of her son's death reached Marika, grief turned to fury. She wept, she raged. Malekith, stricken with guilt, bound the rune of death into his very flesh, so it could never be stolen again. He devoured the death root that spread from Godwyn, swallowing the consequences of his negligence. And then Marika lifted her stone hammer. She brought it down upon the Elden Ring, and by extension herself. With that strike, she shattered its perfect form into countless fragments, scattering pieces across the land. Radagon, her consort and other self, wrestled control and desperately tried to mend it. But he could not fix what had been undone. For her crime, Marika and Radagon were bound within the Erdtree, their bodies sealed into its golden prison. The world was left without a leader. The ring lay broken. From this fracture spilled chaos. War broke out as kin and champions clawed for fragments of power. These shards, called great runes, caused terrible strength. Marika's children turned upon one another, and so this time would be known as the Shattering. Godric, a weakling of thin blood, slunk away to seize a shard of his own. Cowardice carried him through the wars, grovelling before the strong and cursing the weak. In desperation, he turned to grafting, sewing the limbs of others onto his body until he was a crawling patchwork of stolen flesh. Yet even after 100 arms, he could never raise himself to the same greatness of the Golden Line. Morgott claimed his shard and entrenched himself in the capital, defending the Erdtree from his kin. Yet, despite his loyalty, the tree denied him passage. It would not open for him, nor for any, to claim the crown. Yet still he waits at its doors. Rykard, once noble, cast aside his honour. He fed himself to the god-devouring serpent and became one with it. His consort, Tanith, raised a manor in his name, gathering recusants who spurned grace, declaring rebellion their creed. Melania clashed with Radahn. Her clean-rot knights rotted in the presence of her curse, but did not falter. Radahn's redmanes burned, but did not break. They fought until Caelid itself was reduced to wasteland. At last, Melania bloomed with scarlet rot, ending their duel, while Radahn was driven to madness. He did not leave that battlefield, devouring corpses indiscriminately. Even still, his gravity held the very stars in check. Melania was carried in silence back to the tree her brother had raised for her. For it was Rani who had woven the plot that slew her brother Godwyn. She had grown weary of being bound to the fingers and sought her own destiny. To escape her duty as an Empyrean, she stole a shard of the Rune of Death, enlisted assassins, and shed her flesh, preserving only her spirit. But in that act, her brother's soul was also forfeit. Whether intended or not, Godwyn's death became the catalyst of ruin. Thus the children of Marika warred. Brother and sister bled one another dry, each clutching a fragment of what their mother had broken. The throne sat empty, the ring lay shattered, and no lord could rise above the rest. But there, across the sea, through the fog, appeared the Tarnished, nameless, forgotten since their long march. Yet grace called them back, and they obeyed. This was not the same lands between they once knew. New abominations greeted them, and when death should have claimed them, still they rose again. This was what they had been tempered for, what Marika had commanded them to endure. Yet now, when they returned, a woman astride a phantom steed greeted them. Her name was Melina. She offered herself a maiden, steward to impart the whispers of the two fingers, if the Tarnished would carry her to the foot of the Erdtree. In her hand she held a whistle, a gift of Torrent, a spirit steed loyal and swift. And so, together, they set out across Limgrave's green fields and crumbling keeps. until Melina showed them a place apart from this world. The Round Table Hold. It was a dusty hall that floated outside of time, by champions summoned by grace, gathered in uneasy fellowship. Those who lingered there were as strange as any foe the Tarnished might meet upon the road. In one shadowed corner, a woman sat with arms outstretched, cradling the dying, whispering her lullabies of comfort and death. By the bookcase stood a scholar lord in noble robes, attended by a silent figure clad in the regalia of the grave, their body marked by the curse of those who live in death. Not far from them, a hunter vowed to scour the lands of the same accursed beings, his faith in his cause unbending. Upon the balcony, a court sorcerer forever chased the secret of that night of the Black Knives, though the mystery gnawed his flesh away. A warrior of storm blood, fierce and unabowed, sought to redeem her fallen line with valor. By the forge, a gruff blacksmith hammered sparks into the air, his great hands hiding a secret burden, while beside him, a bright-eyed spirit tuner hummed softly, naive to the weight of his existence. And in the dust-choked corners, there lurked a defiler, a twisted man who stalked the sewers below the capital. He muttered of cursed seed beds, of binding all life together through torment and filth, and his laughter crept like mildew along the stone. All these souls, broken, driven, burdened by faith or obsession, gathered beneath one roof. Some would guide the Tarnished, others would betray them, and all would test their resolve. Together they were proof that the lands between had become a realm of wanderers, each carrying wounds left unresolved. It was here that the Tarnished learnt their fate. They must hunt the demigods, claim the fragments of the ring, and forge from them a new order. And so the Tarnished wandered. Lords and ladies fell before them. Great runes were claimed. Yet when at last they stood before the Erdtree, but the way was barred. Thorns, unyielding, sealed its heart. Melina's eyes grew heavy. She spoke then of fire, the only flame that could open the way, and that she herself must serve as kindling. This, she said, was her purpose, left to her long ago by a mother within the Erdtree. Whether that mother was Marika herself or some other forgotten spirit, we shall never know, for Melina would not speak of it further. But another voice whispered in the Tarnished's ear. Shabriri, prophet of madness, whispered of a darker path, that the Tarnished could take the burden upon themselves, embrace the yellow frenzy of chaos, and burn the Erdtree with their own cursed flesh. To do so, they must descend into the deep and accept the embrace of the Three Fingers, who waited in a forbidden tomb beneath this world. Melina swore that should the Tarnished take this path, she would turn against them and hunt them until the ends of this world. Whether by maiden sacrifice or tarnished ruin, the Erdtree burned, the heavens blackened, the air filled with ash, and the Tarnished were swept away by storm into Farum Azula. There in that crumbling city adrift in time, they faced Malekith, the Black Blade. With his fall, the rune of death was loosened once more upon the world. The Tarnished returned to the capital, the Erdtree above now a red hollow husk. Champions sought to bar their way, for all knew what must come next. Even Godfrey himself, the first Elden Lord, to seize his throne again. Yet banishment had stripped away his regal mask, revealing Hora Lu, savage chieftain of the Badlands. With axe in hand, he fought as he once had in forgotten wars. But the Tarnished struck him down all the same. At last, the Tarnished stood before the Erdtree's heart. There hung Marika, fragmented and lifeless. As her bonds broke, she fell, and in her fall, her form twisted. She was Radagon, her other half, her consort, her mirror, He rose to protect the ring, the order, his shattered kin. But he too was felled, and from his body burst forth the Elden Beast, living star, vassal of the greater will. Yet the Tarnished slew even this, and when the beast was undone, Marika lay broken at their feet. Her body slumped in ruin. The ring lay open before them. The fate of the world trembled in their grasp. And so, shall the ring be mended, and a lord crowned? Shall it be cast aside? Well, what will you decide, Tarnished One? Perhaps you choose the simplest path, to gather the fragments, to mend the ring, to restore the Erdtree once more. No changes, no alteration. The laws return as they were, just as the greater will desired. The throne is filled, yet the floors remain unchallenged. Stability, yes, but built upon the same cracks. Beside you stands Marika, fractured still, her stone lips closed, her eyes forever shut, offering neither blessing nor protest. Another path whispers of an idea of perfection. A philosopher in a shining mask gazed upon the world and saw its cracks by the hands of those who shaped it. Gods who bent the law to their own desire, proving them no wiser than mortals. In his silence, he dreamt of a perfect order where such fickleness could never again steer the world astray. The rune he left would make it so no hand might tamper, no whim might mar. The golden law, his so-called perfection, would yet be another cage, a world pressed into the shape of one man's vision that brooks no choice. Or maybe you seek a gentler thread, to weave death back into the fabric of life. Fear, the deathbed companion, took the Prince of Death into her arms, and with him birthed a rune to restore what the Erdtree had denied, the right of death. No longer hunted, those who live in death may rest easy, and the world learns again that to live is to wither, to love is to lose, and to die is to return. A quieter mercy, perhaps even a bittersweet reprieve. But there are endings that bring no peace. You might embrace the loathsome dream of the dung-eater, to spread his curse until every soul is defiled, every child born into torment, in such an age where no one stands above another, for all are equally damned, a realm of filth and despair where the soil itself festers and every lineage is poisoned, a twisted equality. And yet darker still is the fate of the world of flame. If you descend and embrace the Three Fingers, you do not claim the throne as Elden Lord at all. You are bound instead as Lord of Chaos. Shabriri exults through Yura's warnings and Vik's ruin linger, their bodies scarred and broken by madness. Should you take this path, the world becomes a pyre. Not just the Erdtree, not just the throne, but everything. Melina against all odds survives, yet swears vengeance eternal. But the flame cares not. It burns until nothing remains, and from such ashes, nothing may ever rise. Yet there is one ending unlike the rest. You may cast aside the throne and tree alike, and take the hand of Rani, the pale witch of night. With her, you reject the greater will, the fingers, and every god who meddles in your fate. Together you step into an age of stars, a 1,000-year voyage into the cold night. The lands between is severed from its chains, left adrift beneath the dark moon's gaze. It is an ending both chill and wondrous, distant and eternal, and strange. Freedom at last, but freedom in shadow, beneath stars that may never answer. What could behold us in a land far, far away? So, which tale shall be told of you? Kingship, moonlight, fire, curse, All paths lie before your feet. They will tell stories of the Tarnished for ages yet to come. But only you will know which story is true.